For Ferrari, it's the same story again, at least for now. The Spanish Grand Prix, round 9 of the 2025 Formula One season, didn't reveal anything new. According to the Prancing Horse, many things could have changed, especially concerning McLaren's advantage. But considering the current performance of the MCL39, it seems the Woking team hasn't been affected in the slightest by the FIA's TD018 technical directive aimed at limiting aerodynamic flexibility of the wings. Without drawing conclusions too quickly, it must also be said that only today's qualifying session will offer a definitive indication of Ferrari's outcome. We know very well the issues faced by the Maranello cars in achieving proper thermal management of the various tire compounds, especially in qualifying laps. These difficulties seem to be re-emerging in Barcelona, despite the new front wing fitted to the SF25. This update, which the drivers confirmed as not too significant in closing the gap to the top, can nevertheless expand the car's operating window, something it definitely needs. In terms of handling, both SF25 cars once again showed understeer. This results in difficulty for the drivers to hit the apex, particularly at medium-speed corners. However, this lack of rotation is a general issue throughout the lap. The front end struggles, even considering the attempts to shift the overall balance forward in Spain to ease the load on the rear tires, which would otherwise tend to overheat. The most stressed tire is the front left. In turn 5, which features negative banking, the Ferrari struggles a lot to find the apex. Of course, the same goes for other cars, where they try to drive around the corner without aiming for the inner curb. However, other teams have shown sufficient rotation to be able to carve a much tighter line. This reduces the likelihood of suffering a snap-on corner exit when the driver gets back on the throttle. The other major handling issue, stemming from a weak front end, is in direction changes. The SF25 single-seater not only lacks agility, but also tends to become unbalanced when it needs to switch the racing line quickly. This is definitely a weak point as the driver is forced to lift off, resulting in significant time loss through the corner. Lewis Hamilton stated that the car is difficult to drive. This suggests the team is once again trying a very aggressive setup this season. We will only have confirmation of this later today. The fact that the Ferrari car performs well in the third sector confirms that the rear is not working badly at all, while, as mentioned, the front is clearly struggling. This refers especially to the lack of front-end load compared to the McLaren MCL39 and the Red Bull RB21. Ferrari loses out on corner entry, but the rear puts power down effectively. The gap is telling when looking at the data, though telemetry shows a particularly large loss at the chicane in turns 7-8. In this section, the SF25 loses nearly 3.5 tenths to the front runners. That is why the real gap might be around 3 tenths, not the 5 tenths, shown in the second free practice session for the Spanish Grand Prix. We took a detailed look at the telemetry data related to the moment Charles Leclerc lost those 3.5 tenths. On corner entry, the Monegasque driver suffered a strong and completely unexpected oversteer moment, a snap that wasn't caused by any negative characteristic of the car. In this case, it was clearly a driver error, partly due to a strong gust of wind. Ferrari therefore showed two faces during Friday practice at the Circuit de Catalunya Barcelona in Spain. After encouraging signs in FP1, some experimental setup changes and lower track temperatures created difficulties for the drivers in managing tire temperatures. Both Lewis Hamilton and Charles Leclerc struggled at mid-corner, losing out during traction phases. Several complaints were heard over the radio, despite various adjustments made to define the car's setup window. Looking at long-run data, Charles Leclerc was on average 6 tenths slower than Max Verstappen. The Monegasque couldn't find the right feeling with the tires used at the start of the session. That is why, after just 4 laps, he switched to the red-banded Pirelli tires. The softer compound had already delivered positive sensations during FP1 long runs and seems to suit the Ferrari better. Simone Berra, head of the Italian tire supplier's engineers, stated that wear rates between medium and soft compounds are almost the same. However, the SF25 single-seater did not have the ideal setup, struggling with balance and, as a result, failing to extract optimal grip from the compounds. It was easier with the C3, where that extra grip was found. Lewis Hamilton ran a slightly longer stint on the mediums. The Brit started with higher lap times than his Maranello teammate, attempting to improve as the laps went on. But even this strategy did not work particularly well. Lewis Hamilton ended his stint with average times similar to Charles Leclerc's, unsurprisingly. Max Verstappen and Lando Norris were the fastest with different compounds. The world champion requested several changes, including front ride height and rear springs. This move already improved handling by the end of the first session. In the second, the Dutchman took to the track with a well-balanced car that required no further changes. The RB21 setup currently seems more geared toward race performance than qualifying, showing better tire management overall. Oscar Piastri and Lando Norris tested two different compounds, with the former on mediums and the latter on softs. Like Ferrari, the Woking car performs better on softs. Lando Norris was 7/10 faster than his teammate and managed performance drop-off much better. After the fourth lap, Oscar Piastri's lap times began to rise by over 0.15 s per lap, while Lando Norris was still able to trim his lap time. Tire management was also tricky for the two Mercedes drivers. Both completed more than 10 laps on softs, showing immediate problems with rear tire temperature management. Kimi Antonelli experienced a more gradual performance drop compared to his teammate, who suffered from early graining. This issue arises when a compound is used too aggressively while still cold. The tread particles in contact with the asphalt vitrify, and only after several laps and some tire wear does performance return, as was the case for the British driver. Lastly, the telemetry data from the first free practice session in Barcelona illustrates this. In the first session, the Ferrari drivers showed a good pace during a relatively long stint. If we exclude Max Verstappen, who ran a shorter stint, Charles Leclerc had found excellent car balance. The Monegasque did not complain about grip or tire temperature management over the radio, unlike in the second free practice session at the Circuit de Catalunya. Moreover, the degradation telemetry data shows how well Charles Leclerc managed performance drop-off on the softs. The Ferrari engineers and technicians will now need to reconcile the setups used in both sessions and identify the root of the performance gap on the medium tires. The Ferrari engineers made significant changes between the two sessions to a car that had previously been well-balanced, opting for a setup that was too stiff. This likely benefited aerodynamic efficiency through medium-speed corners, but increased tire slip during traction phases, raising temperatures. Overnight simulator work will be essential to find a convergence point and provide the drivers with a more drivable car. Only in this way will they be able to extract performance in both qualifying and the race. Ferrari got through all its planned program over the 2 hours of free practice yesterday, evaluating all three compounds supplied by Pirelli. Last evening, the Maranello team studied all the data ahead of more work scheduled for today, starting at 12:30 Central European Summer Time in the third and final free practice hour, concentrating mainly on qualifying.